We have intelligence from various sources suggesting that similar provocations are being prepared for other regions of Syria, including in the southern suburbs of Damascus, where they're planning to plant chemicals and blame the Syrian government for using them. But we believe that any incidents of this nature should be thoroughly investigated. We are going to officially call on the relevant UN agency in The Hague to thoroughly investigate the chemical attack.
He was expected to announce his candidacy for the country's upcoming elections. Instead, Hassan Rouhani took to the podium to condemn US action against Syria for a second time.
The Syrians must give a response to the terrorists on the battlefield, one that sends a clear message to the Americans that terrorism will not be tolerated and their presence can't continue. The blows that will be dealt to the terrorists will make the US regret its actions.
The Iranian president over the weekend also called for an impartial probe into the suspected chemical attack in the war-torn country. A group that includes allies Moscow and Tehran had earlier released a statement warning Washington against further military actions.
The United States crossed red lines by attacking Syria. From now on, we will respond to anyone, including America, if it attacks Syria and crosses the red lines.
In Italy, as top diplomats from the group of 7 major nations convened for their annual meeting on Monday, the Syrian crisis remained a priority.
We rededicate ourselves to holding to account any and all who commit crimes against the innocents anywhere in the world. This place will serve as an inspiration to us all.
Amid tensions, questions have been raised over Washington's changing strategy over Syria, which may now include regime change.
The bombing of Syria by the Trump regime confirms the notion, to paraphrase Gertrude Stein, that an imperialist is an imperialist is an imperialist. Or, to paraphrase Shakespeare, an imperialist by any other name would smell as acrid. Trump is doing what all imperialists do, invade sovereign nations. The recent and previous gas attacks in Syria, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the Kuwaiti incubator baby hoax, the bogus humanitarian crises in Kosovo and Libya, 9/11, and the Iraqi WMDs are just too convenient as excuses to launch preemptive attacks to be taken seriously. If Trump is so concerned with the graphic pictures of children purportedly gassed in Syria, why doesn't he respond to pictures of starving children in Yemen and stop supporting the genocidal Saudis? The question then arises, how many times can the U.S. lie in order to bamboozle public opinion to justify its wars and still get away with it? It appears that Abe Lincoln's famous quote, "You can fool all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time," continues to hold true. Hopefully more and more people cannot be fooled any longer. Contrast the U.S. count of the gas attack in Syria to the bombing of Mosul in Iraq. According to the U.S., terrorists have been using human shields in Mosul, huddling women and children in vacant buildings that appear to be genuine targets, thus placing them in harm's way so that they will be blown to bits by U.S. airstrikes. The terrorists can then decry the slaughter for their own purposes. The same holds true in Syria's Idlib province. Either Syrian airstrikes unknowingly bombed chemical weapon stockpiles where civilians were housed, or the gas was deliberately released by the terrorists to create an incident that could be used against President Assad. Either way, the purpose was to give cover for the U.S. military escalation. Now that the U.S. has boots on the ground and is launching airstrikes against Syrian forces, Trump has done what critics of Hillary Clinton said she would do if elected, which only goes to show that there is no substantive difference between one or another imperialist who occupies the White House. It also seems very opportune that Trump stole the scene during hyped U.S.-China summit by attacking Syria during Xi Jinping's visit, sending China a not-too-veiled message that U.S. unilateralism and his willingness to use military force whenever he deems it necessary. There are also other benefits that Trump's handlers may anticipate from the false flag gas attack and the U.S. retaliation against Syria. It delegitimizes the Assad government, allowing the U.S. to more directly intervene in Syria to counter Russia. Now the U.S. has boots on the ground and will feel free to engage the Syrian Arab army whenever it chooses. It can thus assert its position in Syria more forcefully. The gas attack pinned on Assad and Putin also deflects attention away from the mass casualties inflicted on the civilian population of Mosul by U.S. bombing. Forget about the 200 women and children killed in Mosul. Look at the pictures of gas victims from Syria. It distracts people's attention away from the terrorist attack in Leningrad, a.k.a. St. Petersburg, so that no sympathy need be shown. And as stated above, it serves as an object lesson for Xi Jinping during his summit with Trump. The attack was meant to tell Xi that this is what will be done when the U.S. sees fit in North Korea or the South China Sea. It told Xi that the U.S. plays by its own rules and does not adhere to international or domestic law. That's a long list of benefits that the Trump administration thinks it has achieved by this whole episode. As recent events indicate, Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," actually means "Make American Imperialism Great Again." Trump only differs from Obama tactically, not strategically. Rather than leading from behind, he would rather engage in brinksmanship. This bodes ill for peace and stability in the world and necessitates that all imperialist forces forge still greater unity to combat U.S. imperialist hegemony.
The Russians have announced a new attack sub, right? It was recently unveiled. What can it do? Well, according to the Russians, it can carry 300 torpedoes as well as have a missile capability. This is part of a whole suite of subs. It's going to be 6 or 7 subs that they're expecting within the next 4 or 5 years, possibly 6, that they'll be rolling out, and they'll be submerged under our oceans. They're calling them the black hole fleet, the black hole submarines, because they're so silent, they're impossible to detect. They just get lost out there in the ocean. So they're kind of suggesting that no one's going to be able to find them and figure out what they're up to out there. We need to put the fact that the Russians are revealing, doing a very big, showy release, launch of the submarine, right, in the context of the messaging. It's sending a big message of they're modernizing and expanding their submarine fleet. There's been lots of reports for quite some time now that the Russians have been scaling up and doing a lot more patrolling around the world's oceans with submarines. And they've not just acknowledged, but they've stressed. They said, by the way, guess what? In 2016, we had already reached and surpassed Cold War levels of patrolling in the world's oceans. The new submarines, they're saying, can carry the Caliber missile, which is another new missile that the Russians have introduced. A couple of years ago, they used these missiles. They said they used these missiles against Syria. We did see activity. We saw that they struck targets there, and they said they were the Caliber missiles. If that's the case, Russia's saying that they have a range of about 1,500 miles. What does that mean to us? Well, it does mean that if submarines were sitting in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, they clearly could strike things on U.S. soil. From, say miles off of shore, you could reach Topeka, Kansas, you could reach Denver, theoretically, with that kind of missile reach. There is the attack threat, right? We know that on the extreme end, they can also carry nuclear weapons, right? That's a serious thing. But there's lots of things that they can do in between. One of those things is surveillance. They can be spying off coast, and we've had some international scuffles that have reached the press. Folks might remember, for example, Russian submarines were spotted off the coast of Scotland, and Great Britain was not too happy about it, scrambled some RAF, threw them in the air, and kind of encouraged them to move along. So there's lots of things, there's lots of threats and risks that exist underwater beyond just an attack of a missile. What it does concern me about is that they are sending a very clear signal, particularly in the Arctic region. Now, why should we care about the Arctic? It's so far away. Well, it could affect, if you're in America, it could affect you at home because it could affect your electricity prices. It could affect your gas prices because there's the expectation in the Arctic region as the ice recedes. There's a general acknowledgement that there's vast mineral and sort of oil and gas resources up there. In fact, they've already tried to petition the UN claiming an area the size of France and Spain on the seafloor of the Arctic, saying that's an extension of their continental shelf, so they already have a right to it. So why should we care about that? Because it has effects on our pocketbooks at home as well. Whoever dominates and takes control, seizes control of that region, will have control over very valuable and lucrative assets. The second thing, of course, up there is that as it recedes, we'll have more access to Asia. So if Russia gains control and dominates that region, they could have a Panama Canal sort of dominance where they have a shortcut to Asia that they have control of up there. So submarines can be used for that sort of thing. And the second piece that I'm concerned about is communications. And we do know that Russians have been sighted, the submarines have been sighted near the cables. What people might not know at home is that the vast majority of our communication relies on these fiber optic cables that are laid throughout the ocean floors. And so submarines can gain access to this. Now, is it improbable that they would be able to sever a cable down there? It's not, because by accident in the coastal regions, that does happen with like fishing vessels and stuff. They accidentally do sever the cables. But the advantage there is that we can find where it's been severed and fix it. If they go out to deep in the ocean, very deep in the ocean, how would we find where they've severed communication? Now, what's the net result of that? No communication whatsoever. So think your emails, think stock exchanges, think banks, things like that. We all rely on this communication going backwards and forth. So as a preemptive strike, it would be devastating to the United States if the Russians were to do something like that with their submarines. And the key about subs, like I said, is subs are a powerful weapon in anyone's arsenal, right? Because they're silent, they're stealthy, and also lethal. But they don't have to use missiles to be lethal. They can also wreak devastation by doing things like severing communications or seizing control of natural resources. We have the best fleet in the world. To stack up right now, we definitely